Welcome back to another edition of The Cabinet. Joining me in the cabinet today is an educator, and we love talking to educators, especially amidst everything that's happening in the country. We've had educators in the cabinet before, and Jasmyn Williams is joining us today to talk about how the pandemic is affecting education. And I'm really interested to talk to you. Just I saw a video that was circulating with you just kind of sharing some things that I don't think a lot of people actually realize what's going on and how teachers are navigating these uncharted waters. And I think everybody feels like they're hanging out to dry right now. So like parents feel alone. They're vocalizing openly that they are not educators and they don't know what they're doing. I think I saw a video this morning about a lady was like, I don't know what an improper fraction is. I don't care. And I can't do this. And so I think the conversation is worthwhile, but I think it's important for us to have this conversation. And here at The Nation, we really talk, I say us a lot, but I'm talking to the Black community. Absolutely. We have people from all types of backgrounds that listen, but it's important that we have conversations about us and that focus and highlight issues, good and bad, among us. But if we don't talk about them, nothing will change. So before we play the video and jump into it, talk to me a little bit about just who you are and where you're from, and we'll move it forward.
Excellent. So my name is Jasmyn Williams. As you said, I am an educator. I currently teach third grade in East Cleveland, Ohio, originally from Cincinnati, but I moved up to Cleveland here after undergrad. I did graduate school here and just kind of found my home here and never left. So I've been teaching third grade now for, this is my 4th year teaching third grade. One of those years was a split, but it's always been in urban education. That is my drive. That is my why. My moving force is urban education. So that's kind of always where the realm that I've stayed in. And since I've been in education, I started doing Teachers Academy like in high school. This was like I always knew. And then I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher, but I also knew that there was an issue. And I think that with the pandemic, it has really shined a light on the disproportion in education and also the need for a change.
Got it. And I think I appreciate you making that clear. But I also think sometimes people don't realize not just how impactful an education is on a child, but what goes into making that educational experience successful. And so I admire teachers that are passionate about, and I'm somebody that believes that you shouldn't do anything that you don't want to do. So I'm the main advocate for people like finding whatever it is that you're passionate about and jumping into that. Mm-hmm. So when I find people, teachers especially, that have done that, I'm discouraged for you when we end up in situations like this where resources are already scarce, but when things are stripped and we don't have, you don't have everything that you need. Yeah. So I want to play this video and then we'll talk about it right after the jump.
So we're giving these standardized testing in the middle pandemic, even though these kids do not come in, they're all obviously at home, okay, so they're not necessarily in the best environment for home. And we've obviously been very, very clear about, they're not supposed to get help, kids should be taking this by themselves. It's a state test, so they know that they're not supposed to. And I'm literally watching three of them have gotten help already on this test and we just started it. And then when I say the announcement, like, hey, just as a reminder, they're acting like they literally have no idea what I'm talking about. And then obviously because they're kids, they're looking over at their parent like, like they're not supposed to do that, but they're doing it anyways. And then the part that's also just so disappointing is like when I message my boss about it, because I'm obviously very, very, they're not supposed to do that. Like, it's just not the data is gonna come out ridiculous if you get help on it, because it's obviously gonna be like an adult score and not the true representation of the child. So I said something to my boss and he's like, it is what it is. This is the best we can do. Like, no, the best we can do is not give standardized testing in the middle of a pandemic. That will probably be the best that we can do. So it's like, I don't even know who I'm mad at. It's just, yeah, being a teacher, y'all, right now in today's climate is something else.
So I want to go back, and I should have done this at the beginning, but I want to go back. I assume that you were teaching last year as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're teaching, and I've walked through what, probably for my listeners and viewers, more times than they want to hear, like how things kind of unfolded here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going about your day, and there's word of this pandemic. Things are spreading, and what happens? How were you notified about what the next steps would be for your school and your students?
What was so interesting was I was actually out on maternity leave.
Oh, wow.
When that hit. Yeah. So I what I can recall is that one of those days it was just like emails being like flooded of changes in this, and it was like it was an emergency staff meeting to talk about how we move forward. It was a lot of get packets and work and things together for these kids to have. It was a lot of uncertainty because if you remember, back then it was only supposed to be
2 weeks.
until, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So the admin and the education system, I feel like as a whole, really only planned it, for that 2 weeks. So they were really taking this day by day, not necessarily out of negligence, but more so out of poor leadership higher up, which, he was. A lot of people were unsure of what was going to happen next. I just feel like, starting back then, getting that, I remember being a little bit shocked, like, wait, what is happening? And coming back to things that was just unfamiliar, but it felt okay because at that time it was only supposed to be for a little while. So
Got it. And I think that part, and that I think everybody has some responsibility when it comes down to it. The government's really the people that are responsible, but America's a very entitled place, and we just believe that things are like, no matter what we were seeing. And I work obviously in news, so we're watching what's happening in China, what's happening in Italy. And I remember telling people and my friends, and they're like, do not be an alarmist. They're trying to tell me to calm down. I'm like, this is not, like, if what
yeah,
happens or what's happening over there happens over here, we're not prepared for it.
no,
Like, there's just no way for that everything can just stop. And that's really why people thought that it wouldn't happen, because
yeah,
we weren't prepared for it. But it did happen. And so that left so many parents confused, students confused. I
yeah,
can't imagine what it's like to be a teacher, and like now you have to figure out how to teach these kids that may not be coming back. You may not see them again. And then where, I think I got alarmed, a lot of people got alarmed, is like, and they're just gonna go to the next grade just with, they're just like, what happens there? So
hmm
as things started to unfold, and you guys were able to plan through for the remainder of the year, what were some things that you had to, or what, talk to me about some of the challenges you had, not just with the students, but with communicating with parents and even with the school?
yeah. So a big thing that happened in the spring when it first happened was that as a school we did not provide Chromebooks. That was a huge issue, because again, as I stated earlier, I teach in East Cleveland. That is a inner city charter, 99% African American,
Okay.
average income 2025, and that is me falsely quoting it, being generous. You know what I'm saying? It's an area that are an amazing people, but the resources and the love and the care isn't I've seen more in other places. So with that
Absolutely.
being said, they can't just go buy a Chromebook, and if they can, they can't buy it for all of their children, and they are also losing their jobs. They are also having people getting sick. They're also going through their own traumatic experiences that us as Americans are, as we're going through. So it's like they didn't have the resources. So a great thing about my charter was like, okay, let's figure out how we can get them Chromebooks. So we were able to loan Chromebooks out this upcoming school year. And that, as you thought, you would think that that would be like perfect, like we're ready to go. They got Chromebooks, we're good. Then came internet, like, oh,
And
okay.
to that point, I'm like, it's important that it's like I saw that the internet service providers were giving like service to some like
Hmm.
some areas and some schools, especially
Yes,
communities that didn't have it. But
yes,
what people don't realize is that the internet service providers never planned for everybody to be online, and so there was not even bandwidth. They don't expect your entire
yes,
household to be online at the same
yes,
time. But if mom, dad have to work, and then all three kids are doing online school, there's no
yeah.
bandwidth for that. No one's planned for that. These networks, even like the Zoom network, nobody was ready for this. So
Nobody was ready. Nobody was ready.
with
We've
that
had so
bottleneck,
much
like
stuff.
how do what I can't imagine. So third graders, what is
Mhm.
like what is the response? What is their overall feeling about the online school experience? Just generally.
Well, let me first start off by saying that those kids are resilient. Like, I, we as adults complain about it honestly more than they do.
Mm.
They go with the flow. They're kids. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you make it enjoyable, which that is like that a goal of mine is to make every day different. So it doesn't get played out. Staring at a screen, it gets old. They're kids. They want to move. They want to do. So they've been very, very resilient in the process. But what I can honestly say is that it is affecting their mental health. It is affecting their social and emotional needs. They don't get to play with each other. What about the kids who don't have siblings?
Right.
They haven't been around kids since March. It's been a pandemic. They can't go play. They can't go outside. They're not at parks, museums. Cedar Point. They're at home. Because that's where it's safe, and it's lonely for them. And I have some kids that want to just sit on the live when they are able to get off, just to have someone to like work with, interact with. So it's like when we are thinking about the problems and the challenges, the academic piece is just, a fraction of the bigger piece of how is this going to affect our children's emotional development? How is this going to affect them? I have some students, without, sharing too much, but they're in environments that are abusive. They're in environments that aren't consistent. They're in environments with siblings and cousins and aunties and uncles, and which is amazing. Family is awesome, but not when you're trying to learn.
Right.
Um,
Well, and
yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that before we jump into the standardized testing,
Mhm.
because I know we've seen issues, and our sister network covered. I don't remember exactly where it was, but there have been a number of issues, behavioral issues that have happened at schools, and we've what I've seen, at least with the data that we have, is Black students are still being affected disproportionately and being chastised really for behaviors that all of these students could be doing online. And we're seeing that these behaviors, I know there was one student that he had a toy gun that was affixed to his console or whatever his game system was, and he moved
Uh-huh.
it. He just moved it. The teacher, it was the art teacher, she was alarmed. She called the parents, notified the principal, called the parents, talked to the parents. The parents assured them that they understood he shouldn't have the toy gun. They still sent the police to the house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't imagine. I understand that, you as a teacher sitting in that seat, I know that you're going to see things that you
For sure.
probably you would not see. You may hear
Absolutely.
about when the kids come to school, but now you're actually in the home, which
Absolutely.
feels invasive for the parent,
It is.
obviously.
It is.
And so,
Yeah.
what is the? And I know certain schools have had policies like the home is now the school, the same rules apply. How do
Yeah.
you navigate that?
So, it's it's tricky. It's tricky because it's a fine line between encouraging a good learning environment and policing these students in their homes.
Right.
And it's unfair to them and invasive. I mean, think about it. Even if we take a step back, when have you ever had the teachers, the administrators be in your house every day?
Every day.
Life happens. You get into disagreements. You're tired, you're groggy, you're annoyed, you snap. Things happen, and it's like we're always there. And I feel like I've run into a few coworkers that I've had to address. Like for saying, you need to make sure that you're at a kitchen table or a desk during school hours. And you can't say that because everyone doesn't have a kitchen table or a desk.
That's
You know
true.
what I mean? You can't say that. We can ask them to be sitting up. We can ask them to be alert. We can ask them to be in the screen, but we cannot regulate where they're going to learn. They are not the only people in those homes. These parents did not choose a house that was set up for online learning. They don't homeschool. So these are, lives that have been completely altered. And I think teachers have to do a fine line with policing students and passing judgment, honestly, and as opposed to just teaching. Because I have a student that sits on his floor every single day, but guess what? He has straight A's. So I could be on his back every day talking about some be at a kitchen table, but he's learning. He's
Right.
paying attention. The
Right.
quietest place for him happens to be right there. So you know what? If that's where you learn, that's where you learn. So I try to make sure that now I do have a few rules, like, obviously keeping it respectful, shirts on, boys can't have, your shirts off. You wouldn't be, shirts off at home. I prefer them to be indoors just because of distractions, noises, and internet connection.
Right.
So we do, ask that piece. And the only time we request cameras being on is if they're taking like tests or things of that nature, because just for help and reasons like that. But I think yeah, our goal has been to how can we be as accommodating for these students and these families.
And
Um,
I mean, you make great points, and I think adults can think about it this way: we all have to be on. I mean, I have to do the show like this. I have to do meetings all day. I don't want my camera on all day. I
yeah,
barely, like, no one wants to do that. So I understand that these kids are also human beings, and
exactly.
they get tired, they get frustrated. I don't think a lot of people, I know lawmakers aren't even considering that. I know that it's hard for people to understand why this is so difficult, and they assume that it could be easier, but it's kind of insane
Yeah,
when you when I first saw this video about the standardized testing, I hadn't even thought about it. But I know that so many different districts and school systems have had to figure out how to properly evaluate these kids.
sure.
And I think that my personal, and this is just an opinion, I'm not an
Sure,
educator,
sure.
so I don't know, but I would imagine that this should be like sounding alarms that it's time to reevaluate how we do all of this.
Right.
Like, I think people should be stepping into, like, waking up. I have a friend of mine, she's a dean at a charter school in Atlanta.
Okay.
And when she first started to go into education, she was more passionate just about mostly Black education, but enamored with what systems were doing in other parts of the world.
Mhm.
And as I talk to educators, and I find that we as the United States are 27th in education globally, which I'm not surprised now that everybody's at home and I can see their thoughts all day on social media. I'm like, I'm not really surprised. But I think, like, again, the same arrogance that we had that this will only be 2 weeks. It's the same arrogance that we have, and we're being beaten in education. Like, countries are running circles around us.
No.
And if we were going to go virtual, we should. If this happens again, which it will, we should be prepared for it. So when I hear that kids in Japan for social studies, they're putting on virtual reality headsets and actually going to France, and they're actually going, and so they're not. And of course you learn it because you went. And I
Mhm.
think if countries are already there, this is why they're not suffering the same way we are
Yes.
during this pandemic. If
Mhm.
we had those abilities, which we do, so how does it? And I know that you said you have to do certain things. How does it remain? We talked about engaging, but how does it remain fun for a third grade? That's what, 8?
Mhm. Mhm. you know what? I think a big piece of it remaining fun is keeping it new. I keep it fresh. I keep it interactive. You know, for example, we use Google Live. That's the interface that we use to teach on.
Okay.
And I constantly have them in the comment box. You know, like, what do you think? Or if this was you, how would you respond? I use a lot of breakout rooms, so I allow them to go into small groups where they can talk to each
Talk
other
to me a
and
little bit
relax.
about that. So with the breakout room, are the students they are able to like go kind of like in groups in the classroom they can break off and
Yeah.
talk,
Yeah,
and as
shout
the
out to
team.
Google. Shout out to
Okay,
Google. Breakout
that's really
rooms, like,
dope.
yeah, it's really cool. Google has stepped their game up to assist teachers. Like, I, I love Google, and they have done breakout rooms to where, like I said, you can, and I can choose the students. So if I want to random assign them, I can. What's really nice is that I can hop into their small groups at any time to, make sure, do you have any questions? Are we on task? And there's a button they can click. It's called the raise your hand button, and it just like alerts me. So even if they're in their small groups and they click that raise your hand button, I'll get it on the main screen, so I can go check out, make sure they're good, and come back. So doing little things like that, just keeping it as interactive and school like as you can, because that is what they miss and that is where they thrive. And yeah, just giving them opportunities also to have a voice and speak. The kids love show and tell. They love to be pinned to the screen, and because it's fun. Who doesn't love
I'm
that?
actually really glad to hear that things like that can still happen. And
Yeah.
they can actually interact with each other on that level, and it's just not straight lesson,
Hmm.
like and that's over. But when it comes to testing, or even grading, like where do you, when it comes to grading, because I honestly, from what I'm hearing, I actually like the things that they're able to do in this virtual environment,
Hmm.
and the way that they're able to interact.
Yes.
And I know, people, as an educator, people learn in different ways,
Yeah.
visually, audibly, and I think a lot of people like to learn by doing things. And I
Hmm.
think, when you have to focus on a machine, then you are doing more. So there's an opportunity to retain.
Yeah.
But from a grading standard standpoint, have we changed the way that we're doing that? Or is it kind of tailored around the platform? Or is the old school grading models, are those still in effect?
Yeah, they're actually still in effect.
Oh,
The
wow.
old school grading model is still in effect. That the same grading system that has been since grading existed, the A to F.
Wow.
That is still the same. Um, and it's challenging because it's there's a lot happening and there's a lot to focus on. There's a lot of moving pieces here when you're trying to change and alter the grading system. So it does take time, but the problem is that we're not trying to alter it. It's almost like we're trying to keep them in this forced traditional standard way of school, and it's just not conducive. And if we look at things like, the technology, I mean, we were just speaking of Google adding breakout rooms and raising your hand buttons. And it's like everything is moving with the time except the education system. And it's like, why is that? And there are ways if we want, let's hear them out. Let's say standardized testing, the data that it provides them, it really does something for them. Let's pretend. Then it's like, okay, if we have them at home because of COVID, did we consider any like proctoring sites? Like that med school, they go to these rooms that it's buildings, empty buildings that they set up for testing. Did we find funding for that? No. Did we try to, okay, maybe change the curriculum and change the Ohio standards? That's where I am. I'm in Ohio, but the state standards to fit the differences of the pandemic? No. Did IEPs get changed and requirements of an individualized educational plan? Did those standards get altered because students are in virtual/hybrid, so they're only there half the time? Did that get changed? No. So it's like none of the requirements and expectations have been changed, but everything else has. And it's
And let's pause there for a second, because I think that, you know even when it comes down to standardized testing, I can't even find the logic in why we wouldn't change more. Like, if everything has changed, then obviously the way that we evaluate has to change as well.
Yeah.
The way that I can't imagine the way that I did, with scantrons and standardized tests, that's actually what's still happening. And you're expected to, first of all, they're expected to perform.
Right.
They're second of all, they're expected to like perform on that level, and the standard of grading doesn't even change. How does it? So as far as, and I don't remember. I think when I was growing up, we had like this Iowa test that we took, and a bunch of Georgia tests. I was in Georgia at the time.
Okay.
We took a lot of tests. Most of them were very arbitrary. Like, there was no logic, and they were like 3 years behind where you actually were. But that's Georgia.
Yeah.
So, but how do you? How are you? You're and I know that there's tons of expectations, but I'm trying to walk myself through this so that it makes sense.
Yeah.
So everything's changed. You're teaching in a virtual classroom. You're trying to ensure that your students are engaged and retaining the information. And so you have to go at the pace that they're able to like go at, like not some standard or a predetermined. Right. No, they're not coming to class every day. They're not. They're in the classroom for 7 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is. They're not there, and so you're teaching what you can and how you can. The evaluation has to be for it to be valuable, and honestly, I'm taking the school out of this and putting it to even to the workplace. People, they're evaluated by their employers.
Yeah.
No doubt the evaluation will be based on the fact that you work from home all year. Right. Understand that, right? So if we're doing it for adults, I don't understand why, we wouldn't make those changes. And I understand it's difficult when you weren't prepared for everyone to be remote.
Right. But it's like
they
adapt.
Yeah.
We owe it to them to adapt. And they try in some areas. It's like they try in some areas, but are so negligent in others that it's almost like, do you care, or are we checking boxes here and making sure that we're politically correct? Like, what's the motive behind some of this? It's just, I can't for the life of me figure out why we would still be giving these standardized tests in this climate. And when you think about, and we can even talk about the history of standardized testing. If we look back when standardized testing was first administered, it was in the military. They would do that to show rank, to kind of prove to create this separation. It started to be racist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was like, you can go there. If you're not going to say it, I'll say it. Yeah. This was all about race, and they already knew who had less opportunity, less availability to the information and the knowledge. They already knew that they had made the schools less, and we go there.
Them less than, and to rank and to put order, and we know that, and yet we're still using it to evaluate our students. And I'm not saying that teachers don't need a way to be held accountable. Absolutely, we owe it to the students. We owe it to our students to make sure that we are teaching and moving them forward. 100%. But there has to be other ways. There has to be innovation. It's like our education system is lacking the innovative piece. But if we look at who's at the tip top, it's not that they don't. Everything is purposeful. I'll say it that way.
Well, the thing is, I think, and this is why I do get excited when people like yourself show how passionate they are. They speak out about these things and even get involved and put themselves into positions where they can affect some of this change, or even are in schools. I think some, especially some of these charter schools, are godsends. Because and we go, we see it on social media. People's like, drop the first year you had your first Black teacher. People drop it all the time. For me, it wasn't until I was in 6th grade. So 6th grade math, and then I didn't have another one until 11th grade Spanish, and that's crazy. Like none at all. But I think there is an inherent bias. We know that people have inherent bias. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to throw the racist label on people. You have your biases when you're working with people, and teachers have them as well.
Yeah.
In certain communities, there's a class bias. So you know that some
Mm-hmm.
kids have more means, or they have more funds available for them to get the
Good.
help that they need, and
Yeah.
so you are less. Likely to be harder on them because you believe they have the means or they have resources that are going to get them the means. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think considering all of this and pandemic, I was struck by your video when you said that you were like, okay, we have to administer these standardized tests. Tell the parents you can't be there. The parents like, listen, he's at home.
Yeah.
Um, he
And
doesn't know. It's killing me. It would kill me.
exactly. Exactly. And I'm glad you said that. They are, I mean, let's be real. If your child was over there and you know what I mean, they're hitting the wrong answer, you wouldn't be, you'd like, you know, check that. It's
Right. Even
hard.
if
You
I said
love
something
your
like that,
baby.
you know that's not right.
Yeah, and the fact that they're still giving the test, you feel pressure. You don't want your child to get held back in all these circumstances. Your child doesn't want to get held back. It is almost like I'm sure that they were torn. I know that they weren't doing it to be disrespectful or it was nothing personally to me or anyone. It was just human nature. And I think that it, the issue was the fact that we gave the test. The issue was the fact that we gave the test. The kids should not have had to deal with that. They should not have had to experience, that stress and
Well, back to your first point as
yeah,
well. When there are proctoring sites available, there's
yeah,
tons of online schools that were already in existence before this happened. And
yes,
so those schools, those programs give those tests using systems that can maintain the checks and balances that are needed. So,
yeah, yeah.
what
It's
are we
like
missing?
yeah, why didn't we, do we start a committee? Who's on the committee? Can I start the committee at this point? Like, why aren't, and that's, that brings another piece though. It's because they don't really consult teachers. Like, it's kind of crazy in this totem pole of how much like weight is on us, but how much say so and input we get. If they would ask us how we can make this better, we have the solutions. I don't think we're just like, and I'm not saying you do, but I don't want people to think that teachers are just pouting and falling their fist up and oh, this isn't fair. No, we're adapting. Like we're figuring it out. We're just asking to be a part of the process to make it better for all involved.
Well, and I'm glad that you said it because I was gonna ask you what impact or what input are you able to give in this process, or is it just given to you?
Well, I'll be honest. I'm talking in meetings. Okay, so I'm the one that's asking the questions that don't want to be asked. Period. Because I owe it to my students. Period. So, I do get a little bit of I do feel that my administration trusts me. I think they know that everything that I am trying to do is rooted in like the right reason, and so I get a little bit of flexibility where I can, but as far as when it comes down to what I teach, when I teach, what day I'm teaching it on, that's on lock.
Got
Like,
you. Well, you know what, and that's needed, and I'm sure you've probably always been that way, and know and
yeah,
that and stay that way because
yeah,
that's what those kids will know that you fought for them. They will
yes,
remember that you fought for them,
yes,
and they will remember who did it.
yes, yes,
And so we're all going to be held responsible for, we 27th in education, we have rampant dumbasses,
yeah.
and that's just, there's lots of ignorance out here. We
Hmm.
have to do what we can to protect these kids. So while you have the ability to like speak up in meetings, what is the network of teachers like? Are you guys able to share tips
Yeah,
with each other?
honestly, this pandemic, I don't know, and maybe it's just this pandemic gave us more time on, these social platforms, but the education world right now is booming. Like we are on fire with the fight to change. There's someone, his name is Call Me Shivy. He would be someone amazing to talk to.
Okay,
He is
we
honestly
will.
kind of like he's like kind of leading it, his name is Call Me Shivy. He started something called Teachers for Good Trouble. And the underlying premise of it is that we are no longer allowing things to stay the way that they are. And we are starting with abolishing the state test. Kill the state test. It is not needed right now. But that is just the beginning.
Well,
Teachers
and
forget.
honestly, let's be honest. If you know how, and people may not remember how these things work. If it's not needed right now, it's not going to need to be needed for like 5 years because
Hmm.
you give them. Sometimes they're staggered, sometimes they happen in every grade, but you have to adjust the curriculums. All have to be adjusted
Yes.
if things ever return to normal.
Yes. Yes.
And then once that's done, then you have to test around whatever is current. And so,
Right. Right.
if it's not current, it wasn't current last year. It's not going to be current this year. It's not
Hmm.
going to be current next year because these kids are going to move up, and there's not the barometer has to change. There
Right.
has to be a shift somewhere,
Yeah.
and I think passionate people. I'm glad to see that you're doing this. You
Thank
have
you.
to. It's just you got to shake the system, and I
Yeah.
believe in
Yeah.
that. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's time, and there's a lot of great people out there. Another great name in education. Her Instagram handle is Black Girls Teach. The owner is Dee, and she is amazing. Just another advocate for the community. And like you said, yeah, we need people out there to have that voice and to have the networking to be able to, like, okay, if we're going to make some noise now, what are we going to do with it? If we have their attention now, we need to find people who can write to the government. Can you write grants? Can you know what I'm saying? How can we change this? How can you write a proposal? Who do we need to, what is the next step here?
well, and I think what would also help is if we can get these issues out there. People aren't aware.
Yes,
And so, I would like you to come back as much as you want. When there's something going on that people need to know about,
absolutely.
bring it to us. We will put it
Absolutely.
out there. And we're constantly reaching out because it's extremely important.
Yeah.
I know that you guys are also working on a teacher sick day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that.
Next Tuesday, uh, the 15th, December 15th, is Teacher Sick Out Day. And it's amazing. Yeah, excellent. Teachers for Sick Out Day. Yeah, Teachers for Good Trouble. Honestly, if you want to learn more about it, they just did a summit last night on YouTube.
Okay.
It was fantastic. If you type in Teachers for Good Trouble on YouTube, it'll be the first thing to come up. And it was a panel and just different speakers. I mean, they had everyone from nurses to talk about the mental health and the actual, like, issues that are happening here, and how suicide rates are skyrocketed compared to what they've previously been, all the way to principals and educational consultants. But it was a really great message, and it shined a light on why we are doing what we're doing.
Mm.
It is time to take responsibility, and it is time to take advantage of the hold that we're in right now. We can look at it as like, oh, we're at a standstill. What do we do? But like, oh, we make change. The time is now. Everybody's at home. Let's figure it
Right.
out. Trial and error.
Right.
Anything's better than this. And I think that doing things like a sick out day will just really allow our voices to be heard. It's a way to shed awareness to it without causing issues. We're taking a sick day. That's it.
Listen, I
Because
think it's amazing. I love when I heard the name of the entire movement, Teachers for Good Trouble. I think that if the teachers don't make the trouble, it's been too long, and it's been too much of a topic that people are aware of. Especially
yes,
even when it comes down to the way that teachers are paid and compensated. We've got problems across the board. And you listen. I advocate. So,
yeah,
like I
thank
said, let
you.
me know.
Yeah.
I think this day, parents, you should be aware that your child may be affected this day.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And you know what? When I posted about it, what's so beautiful is, this is my last thing. What was so amazing was the parents, like, in my DMs or under the comments saying like thank you, or like, oh my goodness, I thought I was crazy, or yeah, and it's like, their parents, you are not alone. We hear you, we see you, we are fighting for you and with you for your student, and yeah, just for a better being. So
Thank you
please
for saying
continue.
that. I think that goes a long way for parents that have not heard it from teachers that they're working
Yeah,
with.
we're on
They
your
feel
side.
they really feel alone,
If they're on
and
side, yeah, we're on theirs.
if the parents are feeling alone, the kids pick that up. They
Hmm.
understand. Like my parents are frustrated. or
They hear
they
them.
now they
They hear them on
see.
the phone talking and being upset, and I'm not a teacher, and they got me doing all this. They hear that. They know it's strenuous on. They know. So sick out day because we are sick and tired, and our voice will be heard. And this is just the beginning, and yeah, I'm excited to get in some good trouble. Thank you for
No,
having
I
me.
really think that's amazing. I love the work that you're doing, and I thank you for sharing just this piece of it with us. We're going to continue to follow it, and we will just keep us up to date. How
Yeah.
if people want to follow what you're doing, we didn't get to talk about. I know that you're also the founder of TakeNoteLearning.com.
Mhm.
Talk to me about what that project is and how that came about.
Yeah, so Take Note Learning is a tutoring, it's my tutoring business. I tutor students K through 6, just on anywhere from homework help because this is obviously they're navigating a new space, to math and English writing, things of that nature, test prep, things like that. So it's been really cool just to have that one-on-one time. It's been altered because now I kind of have to do that online sometimes
Right.
also. So it does.
Well, can I say this? And
Mhm.
I think it's important. I had tutors growing up, and I think one thing I say it because it's important, but I think that parents need to hear this piece that there are gaps that you can fill, even if you don't
Oh
know how.
yes,
And
yes.
so while you have lots of expectations on the teacher doing the job, one
Mhm.
of the things that, and I think that like we should talk about everything. And
Yeah.
in my childhood, I ended up moving to this really privileged area, and was privileged like my siblings were privileged their whole life. I was privileged like the teen years, and when things were frustrating, where I lived, it was customary for people in the area. They all had tutors, but and this is why I do programs like this. There were tons of people that were transfers, usually black students, that were transfers because they played sports.
Mhm.
So while they would go along to get along, and even the teachers were in on this person needs to pass because they need to
Yeah.
play, there were certain teachers that weren't really standing by that.
Yeah.
What parents don't understand, which even I'm not a parent, but I can explain it because I live this and then I
Sure.
see this.
Yeah.
Um, those teachers knew my parents and knew that I had help. They also knew that these I had friends that were there. Their mom was a single mom. She had 3 kids. She has her kids going to these schools, but she's working all day
Yeah.
to supplement that. She can't afford a tutor.
Yeah.
And so though they start to fall behind it, and I share this and this story sometimes because it frustrates me to no avail because the parents don't know that
Yeah.
these resources are out there. So I think
Yes.
things like Take Note Learning, that's really important. On my graduation day, there was a guy that the teacher called him out at the graduation practice. She walked down the hall. The entire graduating class will remember this. She had a test in hand. You failed this test, and made him take it at graduation practice. Something that she would not have done had his parents been involved. And those are the types of things. And I can
Yeah.
go off on a tangent on why
Yeah.
it's important to be focused on even though it's hard right now, you have to be
Yeah.
involved.
You
You have to
have to
know
be
what's going
involved.
on. Because that
You
day
have
I
to.
hear it in my head that the embarrassment, the shame that she just kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
put out there,
Yeah.
knew it, no, like and I feel like that was all planned. But short story to summarize, people take advantage of that.
Yeah. That's a
I
real
know I
issue.
see they can find out more information about it at takenote.learning.com.
Yeah, technotelearning.com. Follow me on Instagram, the Urban Educator with 2 R's at the
Okay.
end. Yeah, that's where I come doing a lot of advocating there, and just trying to do my part in this is so much bigger than me. And all I can control is my impact, who I can reach out to and touch and have them touch and have them touch. So I'm just trying to do my part in this. And it's not that I don't also want the admin to know, as they see us doing this, it is not a fight against you. We want you with us. This is not a fight, from top to bottom. This is an educational change. We need to dismantle and rebuild this whole get up. And all we're trying to do is get a voice and a hand in that. And
No,
it'll be fun.
absolutely, and I think I appreciate you for saying that as well, because sometimes administrators that are not in on these conversations feel attacked or feel like
Yes, they
they
do.
are
They
are,
do.
are being attacked. Come together with these teachers, be a support, be that support system, and we have to work together, especially
Yes.
within our communities. um
Yes.
if you have not been able to see that there is a target on all black backs, this year should have opened your eyes.
Yes.
And the same target that's on yours, the target is on your kid's back. And so
Absolutely.
this is important. We're going to support you, and I really appreciate you for coming through.
Thank you for having me
Absolutely.
again. We'll be in touch. This was great, so I appreciate you.
Oh, absolutely.
Have a
All
good one.
right. Unmuted Nation continues. After this, we'll wrap things up. Of course, if you have comments, follow us on Twitter or chat along with us. Use the hashtag Unmuted Nation. We will continue to have these conversations, not just focused on education, but focused on our communities. All right. I've got more Unmuted Nation after this. I'm back with you in moments. Stay with us.